Welcome back to Straight Out the Jungle, a Field of 68 podcast, where we're here to talk about all things Auburn hoops. Last night, the Auburn Tigers went to Oxford. They took down the Rebels, a 12-point win to give Stephen Pearl his first true away win as the head coach of the Auburn Tigers, and it was a solid win. Auburn really led from start to finish, Rhett.
Yeah, really good win. I think wire to wire only got down at that one little point at the start. I think it was 5-4, and then after they got back in front, they led the rest of the way and looked really good. And Garrett, going back a few episodes, talking about this team and who can make it happen. And obviously, Keyshawn Hall and Tahad Pettiford are the big guys to look out for. It was Keyshawn Murphy last night against Ole Miss, another Auburn double-double. I think he had double-digit rebounds in the first half. He finished with 16 points and 14 boards. Auburn dominated on the boards. And going back to the very start of the year, that is maybe the biggest surprise about this team is how good they have been rebounding, and it speaks to the style of ball that this team and that Stephen Pearl want to play. The Tigers, after a rough start in SEC play, are sitting at 500. Stephen Pearl is above 500 against Final Four head coaches. Auburn has played 7 of them already this year. They'll play another on Saturday with Todd Golden. But man, things going well right now. We said in the last episode, and we've missed a few after Missouri and after South Carolina, the long weekend made things a little bit weird. But anyway, we're back. And in that stretch, we said, all right, feel like Auburn has to get 2 of these. And they got 2 of them. You would have liked 3. You would have loved Missouri. Played a poor game. But since then, man, shot very poorly against Carolina and Ole Miss and still found a way to win. Really satisfied with that win last night, and I think it sets them up in a pretty good position right now in a wide-open SEC.
Yeah, I want to go back real quick to the point that Stephen Pearl has coached against 7 Final Four coaches, and it's going to be 8 Saturday. I'm curious to know if there is a first-year head coach who has coached against more already than Stephen has. I mean, 7 in a season is frankly ridiculous, and now you have 8, and as the season goes on, who knows where Auburn is going to be playing and who. So it's a testament to the scheduling and the fact that they've won 4 of them, and they have an opportunity to make 5 on Saturday. But yeah, the poor shooting is a trend that continues. However, the winning in poor shooting is a trend that continues, and I think that's probably going to make Stephen Pearl happy, is lose a little less sleep at night than he already is, I'm sure. But just scrappy, finding ways to win. We talked about it last episode. Auburn has so many guys who can give you 15 a game, but it won't be the same one every single time. It'll be different. And this time it was Murph, and we haven't seen Murph really explode like that. I mean, 16-14, an outrageous game. I think he had 12 or so boards with like 17 minutes to go in the game. So he just set the tone for Auburn on the offensive glass and the defensive glass. Was just really dominating the post over Dia. Malik Dia could not affect the game. He could not affect the game for Ole Miss, and I think that's where Auburn really won and kind of pulled away is that battle where, you have the bigger Malik Dia who you think, going into it might kind of dictate the way this game was played, was not the case. Auburn just scouted perfectly in Keyshawn Murphy monster game.
Since getting burned by size early in the season with Michigan and Arizona and Purdue, Auburn has not faced that level of a disadvantage yet in SEC play, and they're going to see it Saturday. Florida's big. But they have come back and figured some things out. And some of it is that the bigs have gotten healthy. Keyshawn Murphy, still don't even know if he's at full health, but you can see that he
looks healthier every game.
Exactly.
Every single game he's running quicker, jumping higher. Yeah. And like you said, you don't even know if he's at 100% still.
And add to that, Filip Jovic, who just continues to play better and better, had the best game of his career so far on Saturday against South Carolina, played well in pretty limited minutes against Ole Miss, minutes that were limited because of how well Keyshawn Murphy and Elijah Freeman were playing. But Auburn has overcome that size disadvantage so far in SEC play. Something else to note that we're going to get to see more as we get further into conference play, is that some of Auburn's losses and wins are aging well. NC State got a big win last night over Clemson. Texas A&M is the second team in the SEC right now, so that loss, Auburn is 3-6 right now in Quad 1. I think NC State right now is a Quad 2 game. If they continue playing well, Auburn's tournament resume is really improving as the season goes on, and we're seeing some of the teams that Auburn has played already. You're seeing the strength of schedule come through, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, exactly. In Arkansas, they picked up a dominating win. I think they put up a 35 burger on Vandy last night as well. So teams that Auburn has beat and teams that have beaten Auburn are still playing just great basketball. And it feels early to be talking about the tournament, but every single one of these games is so crucial. In the SEC just kind of eat each other alive. The best teams are beating the best teams, the worst teams are beating the worst teams are beating the best temes, and vice versa. Everyone's just beating everyone, and that's how it's been in the SEC now for a long time. But I feel like, especially now, there's some parity in this league, and I think that's good for Auburn this year as they look to rebuild. That there's a little bit of parity, there's opportunities to win. Every game they play, they can win. And it's just a matter of what kind of team they face and what kind of team they put out there on the floor.
Yeah, with the Wednesday games yet to be played, there are 4 teams out of the 16 in the SEC that are all right at 500, Auburn included in that. And there are 5 more that are right on the edge of that, either 2-3 or 3-2. So the conference feels like it's wide open. Florida, unfortunately for the rest of the conference, has found their game as conference play has come into swing, and Arkansas and Georgia and Texas A&M are showing that they look like they are, real legitimate contenders for the conference. But this is, like you said, it's a really deep conference. I think we've said earlier in the year, not as good as it was a year ago. You don't have the dominance that you had a year ago. Even South Carolina at the very bottom of the conference they were not a good basketball team, but you had to go in and play Michie Johnson. Like there was depth all in this conference, and that is still what remains. Is it's the quality at the top, probably not as high, but depth throughout. And I think this is one of the few years where you can start poorly in conference play the way Auburn has, and maybe have a chance to recover and not play until the 3rd day of the SEC tournament. That's a long way away. There's a lot of basketball to be played. Most notably Florida on Saturday. I mean, Auburn is historically very bad, even with some great teams in Gainesville. So really, really big game coming up Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really want to see Auburn to kind of go back to more in the Ole Miss game, what we've been seeing, as well as look forward to Saturday. How are they going to distribute the minutes between the bigs? You mentioned Philip Jovic only played 15 minutes, and that was just because he could have played more. Philip did not play poorly at all. 2 for 2 from the field, 5 points and 2 boards. But you didn't want to take Keyshawn Murphy out of the game, and rightfully so. So if you have both of those two dudes clicking on the same night, which Jovic was clicking obviously nowhere near to the level that Keyshawn Murphy was last night. But when you can interchange those two dudes out, throw something new at a different team every night, that is how I think Auburn can really win some games in the SEC. The scoring talent they have with Tahad Pettiford, with Keyshawn Hall, and with Elijah Freeman is, in my opinion, has only scratched the surface of how good he can be. He's just a freak athlete. And then guys like Sway coming along scoring the ball as well. But you don't really point to Keyshawn Murphy and Philip Jovic as guys who are going to burn you for maybe 20 a night. Now maybe you are, and it's just more problems for the opponents. Yeah,
that's the really cool thing. It opens up the game for Auburn. 4 guys in double digits last night. Sway, again, had a game that, on the stat sheet, doesn't fly off. 2 steals, 2 blocks does, I think, fly off the page. But 10 points, 3 rebounds, nothing crazy. But you felt like, again, he had a really good game. He just feels like a very complete freshman who doesn't quite know yet that he's one of the best players on the floor. Something else to note, Kevin Overton came off the bench. The reasoning for that was what Stephen Pearl said was he was late to a team breakfast, and the team, like we've talked about this year, has had some problems with it. Stephen Pearl referenced The Simpsons and X amount of days since an accident.
Disaster.
And he said KO responded to that really well, and he played 24 minutes last night off the bench, only scored 2 points, didn't make a shot from the field, and yet still impacted the game. I mean, got after it defensively, had 4 rebounds. This team feels like, and I know that Ole Miss is not the quality of opponent that is, at the top of the SEC, but it feels like a team that has come so far from the start of the year, and they're still going to have bad games. They put up a really tough game a week ago against Missouri that just didn't look good outside of the first, 6 minutes. But when they play well, and last night, again, the shooting was bad from 3, 2 for 17 from deep, but they got to the free throw line 39 times. When this team plays well, when this team has it figured out, they are so good. And I really think, we were spoiled last year with a Final Four team, but talking about it earlier and the schedule that this team has had to face, I think if you're not coming off of last year's team and you're looking at this team, 9 new guys, 1 returning player who wasn't even your starter with Tahad, and Blake returns but didn't play much at all last year and wasn't supposed to play much at all this year. What Stephen Pearl has done with this group to me is very impressive. I don't want to be like the guy that's just a homer and is all about you know, getting happy about what Auburn can be. But given everything that they have seen this year and a whole bunch of new faces coming in, including, Bruce Pearl leaving, this team to me has performed to, if not beyond expectations, had last year not been what it had been.
Yeah, you nailed it right in the head when you said we're spoiled last year. You probably play 11 guys last year who can give you a bucket at any given time. Auburn is just not that deep this year. They've dealt with some injuries, some players that just haven't panned out. Like, we haven't seen Caden Magwood play in 3 games now. We've seen Blake Michalek with an upgraded role, and you're right. It is impressive. Like you say, you don't want to look at Auburn as it's all sunshine and rainbows, because at the end of the day, they're 500 in SEC play. And when you want to be an elite team, and I think it's important to go beyond the surface of Auburn's record and look at the potential of this team. The potential is off the charts, especially with some of these younger guys. I mean, 2 freshman bigs, Phillip and Sway, those guys do not play like freshmen already.
No,
and we've seen the growth in them. I'll just keep hitting on Phillip real quick. Yeah. We started kind of, when we took this podcast over, Phillip was like, oh, I don't know if he can play in this league. And here we are, 3 or so months later, and it's like, wow, I wish Phillip got more minutes last night. Yeah. And I think that's one of the awesome things about this team is just the individual development, and I think we'll see the team development come along as well. There are still times, however, when this team is missing something, missing that gel factor that I think that last year's team had so well. Don't get me wrong, last year's team was certainly more talented than this year's team, and on top of the fact that they had been playing together for a while, had a great, they gelled really well. If this team can find something of the chemistry they had last year, I think that's when we're going to see a huge jump. Because in the games that they've lost, they just haven't looked good. They've looked flat. They haven't shared the ball well. In the games they've won, they have. And so I think it's finding that consistency, finding that compatibility with the team, and then just shooting it better. 2 of 17, 2 of 19 against South Carolina. So you've made 4 3-pointers in the last 2 games. And I think,
and yet you're 2-0 in
yeah,
those games.
And I think if you're an Auburn fan from a year ago and you were told, yeah, there's going to be a 2-game stretch next year where you guys make 4 threes, you'd be like, oh boy, we must be terrible. But now here we are. Like, they went 2-0 in these 2 games. It's the scrappiness, it's the finding a way to win that I think does it for me, and that's why I think there's an upgraded level of potential for this team.
Yeah, and I think at some point you have to find that potential. We're getting to the point nearing the end of January, like, you can talk all you want about potential, you got to go out there and show it. And I think we're reaching make or break, and one of the things that we heard was these last 2 games, SP wanted this team to play desperate. And they played desperate on defense and had a couple of really good defensive games. And now you are in position still. There's 12 games left in the SEC schedule, and you are right in the thick of it. And something else to point out, they're not wins. You can't go back and change them. But Auburn's first 2 games in conference play were just absolutely insane endings. And they pointed it out on the broadcast last night. Like, this team is a tenth of a second away from having one more win in SEC play with the Texas A&M game. And they are, an overtime period away from just having one loss in SEC play. If they play better in overtime against Georgia, which felt like going into, normally the team that forces overtime, you feel like is the team with momentum. And
especially when you force overtime
like
in that manner.
Yeah. Because for sure, they got one there. I mean, that game probably evened itself out. Auburn shouldn't have taken it to overtime at all. Georgia does what they do. But again, I mean, and you can't go back and say, we should have won those. But what you can do, I think, when you're trying to evaluate a team is say, this team took 2, by the way, really good teams down to the wire in very weird endings. And I think, again, the record, Auburn is what they are, and the record is what it is. And I think those 2 are slightly different. I think Auburn is a little bit better than their record at this point in the year. If you asked me that after Arizona or Purdue or Michigan, I would have said no. Like, those are bad games. And but to me, this team in conference play has proven that they can compete with the really big players. And Florida coming up on Saturday is obviously maybe the biggest test you're going to get all year. Florida on the road. I mean, 2022 Auburn, that was number 1, went into Florida on the road and played awful. So you never really know what can happen with a team like this down there.
Yeah, and you mentioned how you felt after the Arizona, the Purdues, and the Michigans. This is another one of those kind of litmus test games, I think, to see how far this team has come along. If you're Auburn, you cannot go in there and just get blown out. You need to stay in this game because the loss to Georgia's a good team. A&M is a good team. Missouri's a solid team in conference play, but Florida is by far better than all those, and by far playing probably the best basketball going into this game than Auburn played against any of those four. Similar to the run that Michigan and Arizona were putting on when Auburn played them. So it's a matter of, can you slow down just this freight train that's coming down the tracks right now, play your style of basketball, and keep it close, and maybe steal one in the swamp. It's a litmus test. Big game for me.
Yeah. A reminder about Florida, 5 straight wins. They lost their first SEC game of the year to Missouri in a really close one. They've won 5 straight since. Ole Miss had won 3 straight going into last night, and Auburn, finally got one there. So Florida is playing really good basketball right now, and they've overcome some really big tests. They looked great against Tennessee. They looked great, especially in the second half against Georgia. They looked really good last night against LSU, but they've also shown this year that they're up and down, and they lost some non-conference games that people didn't expect them to. So the potential to win this game for Auburn is absolutely there. The question of whether or not they will play up to that potential is certainly also there. And I think with this Florida team, you're not going to get away with shooting as poorly from 3, and you're not going to get away. Auburn didn't turn the ball over much last night, but it sure felt like they were loose with it at times. I mean, Tahad's first 3 of the game came off
after he dribbled it off his foot.
Yeah, dribbled it off his foot, picked it back up, and then shot from like 30 feet. So you're going to have to play disciplined basketball and execute at a very high level to win this game. But it is not at all out of the realm of possibility to me to go in and get a statement win, because Auburn doesn't feel like they really have a statement win this year. They've got good wins. They've got wins over good teams. Going into Florida and winning on the road, that's a statement win. That's a huge resume builder.
Yeah, and shooting it better, you absolutely have to shoot it better. The hard thing there is you get so many shots up in the gym, and then you are producing the good looks in game. I think Stephen Pearl said after the South Carolina game that he felt that there were maybe of the 19 shots they took from deep, there were probably 4 or 5 that were, quote, bad looks. And I didn't think there were many bad looks from 3 last night either.
No.
A lot of open threes.
A lot of open threes that just didn't fall.
And so at that point, it's hard because I think as the coach, as Stephen Pearl, you can't do much other than trust your players, trust their process. They've been in the gym putting shots up, I'm sure. And you're getting the looks, you're generating the offense that gives you open threes. There's nothing you could do. I think that's the hard part because that's really the next dimension of your game that I think can make you that much better to help compete with teams like Florida. And that's the hard thing. There's nothing you could do about it except just see the shots go in and find a rhythm. If Auburn does that on Saturday, I think that puts them in a really good spot.
Yeah. In some ways, to me, that's almost a positive, right? I think Stephen Pearl very much trusts this team. I think that is what Bruce Pearl teams were built on, was trusting players. This team runs a lot more offensive sets than we thought they would coming into the year, but, I mean, he trusts his guys. And they were 2 for 17 last night, right, and 2 for 19 against South Carolina. The good sign to me, to quote the great Dion Waiters, or to misquote the great Dion Waiters, I'd rather shoot 2 for 17 than shoot 2 for 7, because 2 for 7 means I stopped shooting.
Yeah.
Like, they kept taking good shots. They were not taking contested step-back threes that occasionally we've seen guys like Tahad and Keyshawn Hall make. I mean, KO went 0 for 4 from deep, and in my head, all 4 of those were very good shots. I think he had one maybe that was in transition that was trying to get in the rhythm, but everything else was open. And so you're going to hit those. You're going to hit those at some point. Auburn right now only shooting 33% from deep. You'd like to get that up a couple of ticks, but that's not too far below average. It's just, again, we were spoiled so much by last year's team that you forget what normal numbers look like.
Yeah,
exactly. And I mean, I think
2 for 17 is not normal, but
it's not. But 33% from 3, okay, that's not great.
Little,
but that's not that far off of normal.
Yeah.
And so I think for you and I, something that easily liken it to is the 2023 Braves ruined what I expected hitters to do, right? The worst hitter in that lineup had like a 750 OPS. That's ridiculous. Auburn last year, what they were able to do on both sides of the ball has put this expectation in my head, I think, of what I want basketball to be. And when this team doesn't meet it, first I get really frustrated. And then I think about it, I'm like, okay, that was last year was just one of the craziest seasons in college basketball. I mean, all 4 of those Final Four teams are champions in probably any other season, and one of the best teams ever in any other season. And they happen to all run into each other at the same time. Auburn fans, and you and I think, have to come down a little bit and remember, like, this is a brand new team. And at this point in the season, you can't keep making excuses like that, but that's still a reason. And you have to have, I feel like, reasonable expectations for a team like this. And you can want them to be really great, but you cannot expect this team to go out and shoot 40% from 3 because they're not that team. So I think you're right. That was a really long-winded way of saying, like, yeah, if they shoot well against Florida, which they're absolutely capable of doing, they can go out there and compete in that game. That game is Saturday at 3 p.m. Central Time in Gainesville. But before we go, a little bit of bracketology, because we're getting closer to the end of the year. In today's bracketology update from Joe Lunardi, he has Auburn as a 9 seed, playing against UCF in the first round. That's on Michigan's side of the bracket. How do you feel about that? Where do you think Auburn really should be? To me, that's really good. I think 9 seed is about where they are right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think anywhere from the 7 to 10 range is where I'd expect the Tigers to fall. Maybe even the 11 seed in the play-in. Anywhere in that range. It's so early, but at the same time, it's not. It's weird. We're now 6 games into conference play, and it's time to really start thinking about these things. And I think you're right. I think 7 to 11, maybe 7 to 10 is kind of where I'm seeing the Tigers right now. Potential, I think, to really push for a 5 through 7.
Yes, agree.
And the first test comes on Saturday. Speaking of Saturday, I think Auburn should bring out the orange kits once more. Tahad Pettiford now 47 points in 2 games in the orange jerseys this year. I'm not a superstitious guy, but I mean, he likes hooping in the orange.
Yeah, maybe it gets him going. What did he? Do you have up how he shot against Arizona? Because last night,
but it was 30 against Arizona.
I remember he dropped 30. I couldn't remember the efficiency because last night was not particularly efficient, but he certainly did. It was nice to see him score. And we haven't even talked about it yet. But Gehrig, Auburn has had a couple of great dunks this year. Does Tahad's last night beat that Elijah Freeman one for you?
No, I don't think so.
Not quite.
I don't think so. Given kind of the situation, both were in an incredibly high stakes situation. Last night Tahad was kind of saying in the post game press conference, like, this is one that, given any other circumstance, I'm probably pulling it out and I'm wasting some time. And he said, actually, I just could not take it. I mean, the lane's that wide open. I saw him hit the gas, hit the acceleration pedal, and oh boy, he cocked it back and threw it down. So a huge credit to him. But I don't know that if any dunk will beat Elijah Freeman's. I mean, 2 of the best interior defenders in college basketball, and just put them both on a poster in what was a huge game, a huge crowd up in Birmingham. So that was big.
We'll hope for something similar Saturday. A reminder that the Tigers take on the Gators at 3 p.m. Central Time in Florida on Saturday. The Gators are number 16 in the country. That's it for this episode of Straight Out the Jungle. We'll be back after that game to recap